Hello, my weird and wonderful human beings, and before we go any further, I just want to say thank you. A few weeks ago, I posted a video that I recorded back in January at a time when I was seriously struggling with my mental health. Between the pandemic, imposter syndrome, anxiety, depression, and just straight up seasonal affective disorder, I wasn't doing so hot. It took me from January until a few weeks ago to work up the courage to post that video, to be able to share that. And quite honestly, that was probably the most terrifying moment I've ever had, of putting that into the internet and letting myself be that vulnerable. After I posted it, I received a barrage of comments and DMs and instant messages, people checking on me and seeing if I was okay and just being there for me. So thank you. Thank you for being the amazing and weird and kind and wonderful human beings that you are. You have no idea how much it meant to me and how much it still means to me. So often when we compare our lives to the picture-perfect images we see online, our own realities come up short. And it can be hard to compare our realities to their curated perfection. But in between the curated Instagram posts of the perfect life, I saw glimpses of other people who were struggling, other people who were having a hard time. Knowing that other people were struggling made a difference. It made me feel like it was okay for me to not be doing so hot right now. It made it feel like I wasn't wrong or broken for feeling the way that I did. It took me a long time to work up the courage to post that video because I felt like I needed to be in a place where I could be there for others who were struggling in the same way that I was. Because I know that we're out there. I know that there are others who are having a hard time, who are struggling. And it's okay. It's okay if you don't have everything under control right now. It's okay if you don't feel like you're succeeding the way you think you should, or even managing your mental health the way you think you should. It's okay if you're not okay. It took me months to get into a place where I felt okay again. And there are still times when I struggle. But there are certain things I found that help. There are things that we can do to be there for each other and to be there for ourselves that make a difference. That, right there, is the old Motala Bryggeri and Aktiebolag. It's an old cider distillery, and it's been closed for years, but it's still one of my favorite places in town. When it comes to dealing with mental health, in my experience, most of the time it comes down to three main categories: preventative, palliative, and panic mode. Preventative care, when you're talking about mental health, uses a lot of the same tenets and philosophies that it would when you're talking to your doctor. Getting regular checkups, paying attention to symptoms and potential causative. In the case of our physical health, it's things like taking steps to avoid getting sick before we get sick. Things like washing our hands and taking vitamin C or daily vitamins. The same kind of philosophy applies to our mental health, but it can be a little trickier to work out in execution. For me, preventative mental health comes down to a couple of main key points. Identify and make contact with mental health resources in your area. It can feel silly to look for a therapist or a crisis counselor when you aren't in crisis. But you don't wait until you're sick to find a general practitioner. You don't wait until you're bleeding on the floor to have a local doctor. Hopefully, you don't wait until your tooth has fallen out before you find a dentist. We need to take the same steps with our mental health. Finding the mental health services in your area that you can access and afford before you need them is crucial. If you're already in the middle of a mental health crisis and the thought of having to even feed yourself is too exhausting to handle, expecting the you in that condition to be able to find, locate, and organize mental health services isn't just unrealistic, it's unfair. The services that are near you are going to vary, and in the States especially, your access to mental health care can be extremely restrictive based on your insurance status. But there are resources available to help you find local counselors near you and crisis centers, some of which I'm including down below. Beyond mental health services, half of the time, staying on top of our mental health just comes down to staying connected to the world around us. Having friends or coworkers or even just accountability buddies who can help keep us on track, who we can check in with and be honest with. Support groups online can oftentimes be a great resource for this, especially now when we're not supposed to be meeting, but if you have a chance to make those connections in person, it helps. Okay, so I want to talk about palliative mental health care and what the heck that means. Palliative care is any type of medical treatment that you receive that helps to deal with the symptoms, but not necessarily the underlying problem. Think of it like taking an Advil for a headache. The Advil isn't curing your headache, it's just dealing with symptoms that are making you uncomfortable. Palliative mental health care works in much the same way, in that it sort of addresses the things that we might be feeling or helps to mitigate symptoms without addressing the underlying cause. I bring this up because I think it's an important distinction to take. A lot of times online, we will see advice like, take a break, step away from your computer for a little while, make sure you get some sunshine, go for a walk. And that's great advice. But let's be real here. Going for a walk isn't going to fix your mental health. It's just dealing with the symptoms. And that's fine. Oftentimes with mental health, dealing with the symptoms is the best thing that we can do. The most honest and realistic way to deal with what's happening. But confusing palliative mental health care and treating the symptoms for actually dealing with our mental health can be dangerous. Palliative mental health care treatments are short-term treatments. And I want to emphasize that bit. Short-term. These are things that you're supposed to do to help alleviate symptoms or help you feel better temporarily. They're stopgap measures, not real treatments. And they're crucial. They help make the difference between feeling like feeding yourself is the most exhausting task in a day that you can handle and being able to actually actively engage in our lives. But they still aren't addressing the underlying problems. To be clear, I'm not planning on addressing any of your underlying problems here. Figuring out how to deal with underlying stressors and root causes of mental health problems is something that only you can do. Sometimes with the help of a mental health professional, but it's your decision. It's your life. And oftentimes blanket advice on how to deal with a problem can do more harm than good. My final kind of category for dealing with mental health care is panic mode. And I know that's a scary name, but that's because this is a scary subject. Now, I don't actually want you to get to this point before you start using any of the other thousands of resources that you have at your disposal. But we all know that with the best of intentions, sometimes we end up there before we realize it. If you are in that place, please, please, please contact a mental health care provider in your area. Call a crisis center, call a friend, message me, anything. If you get to that space where the thought of waking up the next morning is too much, please know that we will miss you. Please reach out. Because the world is better with you in it. even if it's harder.
Duckies! Hello, duckies. Jeez.
Sometimes we can feel our mental health start to slip, and we know that things are going to be bumpy. To be able to recognize that and pull ourselves back is a huge advantage. But that doesn't mean it's easy. There are a few things you can do that help. For this, I'm going to leave it with my girl Evelyn, because she explains it way better than I ever could in her stress reset routine. I'm going to link that video up in the cards, along with all of the other resources that I mentioned. Dealing with our mental health is hard. A lot harder than it should be sometimes. It can be difficult to recognize symptoms in ourselves and identify causes of stress and know what actions that we can take that actually help us. But there are things that we can do that make a difference. There are things that I did that helped me. The things that help you may be completely different, but the important thing is to take action. We need to start taking a proactive stance when it comes to mental health and treating our mental health with the same care and regard that we do our physical health. Now more than ever. In an age where everyone from Meghan Markle to Michelle Obama is struggling with their mental health, we should be able to be open and talk about these kinds of things, share resources and experiences, and just be there for each other. Much like you guys were there for me. I hope that some of the resources that I provided can help, and again, if you ever feel like you are struggling, or if you ever just need someone to talk to, please don't be afraid to reach out. We've got to be there for each other. That's the only way we get through. So until I see you again, take care of each other, and take care of yourselves. And once again, thank you.